Welcome back to the Open Mic Broadcast Network. The radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince, and Coach Olin Parker on what they call the rubber meeting the road time of the season. Coach, for SWAC baseball, man, we had a very chaotic weekend, but with the chaos, it's becoming a bit more clarity. First and foremost, how you doing this week, my man?
I'm good, man. My season has ended, and I'm just coming up for air and wrapping up some SWAC baseball.
Yes, sir. And speaking of wrapping up, before we get into all the latest unfoldings, I got to touch on this because I've been critical of them all season long, but they've turned it around of late, and it seems at the right time. What about the resurgence of Jackson State, my man?
Man, couldn't speak better for a team, man. Like I said last week, I saw those guys play at Southeastern Louisiana, and they look physical, they look the part, and I think they're finally starting to gel because a lot of them guys, this is their first time playing together, but what better time to gel than now?
No doubt about it, man. They're clicking on all cylinders right now, and I guess with that being said, let us start out with the Eastern Division this week and see how they fared out, where they're standing right now before we mosey on over to that congested West. Okay.
On the east side, you had Alabama State swept Valley, so they're still sitting at 21-3. But then Cookman swept Alabama A&M. They're sitting at 15-7. FAMU lost 2 out of 3 to Jackson, so they're at 16-8. If there was a little more time, Jackson probably could catch them for that third place title, but you know they're sitting pretty at forward now. They could breathe. You know, they're 11-13 with 2 series left, one versus Valley, one versus Bethune, and even if they won 6 games, FAMU would just have to win 1 of 2 from Bethune-Cookman, which could be tough, or Alabama State. You got Valley at 6-20, and you got Alabama A&M at 3-19. So they're those 2 guys are playing just to get the season over with in 2 weeks, and don't look like they have a chance to make the tournament.
Okay, now before we get over to the West, although they're 6 wins and 20 losses, Valley has made an improvement because most of the times we associate Valley with, unfortunately, just about any sport. They're always at the bottom, and even though they are a slot above the bottom, there still has to be not an absolute promising season, but a season to look and build upon from Valley.
Well, I have to agree with you, Mike. They swept Alabama A&M, which Alabama A&M coach has been there for at least a couple of years, so he should not have been swept against Valley. They've also beaten Alabama State once. So to clarify what you're saying, there's some hope there, and I think they beat Jackson State once or twice. So They're right on pace to be a good team next year.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, with all that being said, not that it's not of interest, let's go to this ever so confusing Western Division of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and I'll let you try to explain all this, my man.
Well, Mike, there's so many games missing, man. It's going to be a mess toward the end. You got Grambling took 2 games from Texas Southern. They didn't play a third game, so that's a missing game there. Grambling's sitting at 17-5, but you got TSU that's 13-7. There's a game left from Grambling. There's 2 from Southern. And I think there's one other game they hadn't played yet. So I don't know how that's going to figure out, Mike, because they only got 6 games left. They're playing Prairie View at Prairie View, and then they got Alcorn at home. So
yes, sir. I think that one other game, if I'm not mistaken, should be a makeup game with Prairie View, so they could actually try to do what Prairie View tried to get established with Southern, is play 4 games this coming weekend, like that Friday, 2 on Saturday, and try to conclude with 1 on Sunday. But I have to go back and fact-check that to make sure.
Okay. And you got Prairie View. They lost 3 games to Southern. Man, that hurt. That's kind of deep. That kind of put them, and they look like the closest they can get is second place right now, unless Grambling leaves a few games to UAPB. Then Prairie View had to take their matters in their own hands when they're Grambling come to them on the last week.
Well, what's more concerning for me on that aspect, OP, is this. Of the teams that are in that battle for the West, Prairie View, no doubt, has, on paper at least, the tougher remaining schedule. They have the series coming up with Texas Southern, then they'll close out with Grambling State. Now, the best that they could finish is the number 2 seed, but the worst that they could finish is number 4 seed. And here's why that is the concern for me. If the Panthers finish at the number 4 seed, they would open up the tournament with an ever so powerful Alabama State to start the tournament playoff. And with the pitching inconsistencies that the Panthers have been showing these last couple of weeks, that's a very, very serious concern for me.
Oh, absolutely, Mike. It's going to be a juggernaut once they flip over and get in that tournament with anyone. Because like you said, Jackson is playing real good. And if Grambling should happen to finish out and win first, I'm not so sure that they're just going to, have an easy task playing Jackson. They'd have to play Jackson, and they'll be on the side with Jackson and Bethune. And I know for a fact they shouldn't want to see FAMU no more.
So they don't want them on that smoke.
Man, it's been a rough bout with FAMU. I think their record is like 1-11 with those guys.
Oh wow. Now with all that we have, we not forget about Southern University. They're on a resurgence right now with the sweep over Prairie View. Help clear the murky waters of what this Western Division is looking like right now, OP.
Well, like I said earlier, you got Grambling at 17-5. You got TSU at 13-7. You got Prairie View at 14-9, and you got Southern at 12-9. By percentage, Southern will be ahead of Prairie View because of the games played head-to-head. You got UAPB at 9-15, which kind of eliminated themselves, and you got Alcorn at 3-22. So they're just treading water, finishing up the season now, Alcorn. And UAPB, they don't have a chance to catch them guys because they got 15 losses already.
So the seeding is just about established in the West as it is in the East right now. Now, here's the question. I know Prairie View has a makeup game with Southern. They have a makeup game with Texas Southern. And Texas Southern has a couple of makeup games with Southern and Grambling. But you don't have the windows. I know there's Tuesday non-conference play. How do you propose that they would try to sort this thing out before the seeding of tournament? Or do they go to the old office in Birmingham and start flipping coins?
I think that'd be a coin flip, Mike, because you've got 2 weekends left to play, and the tournament starts the 24th, I think.
Right.
So there's no window opportunity to play those games, because once you play this weekend and next weekend, which will be about the 21st, you got to head on board and head down to Georgia for the tournament. You can't play a game that Monday or Tuesday before the tournament, because it probably really won't mean nothing but seeding. And you don't want to burn pitching just to play for seeding.
Okay, so now you put yourself in a very challenging situation or set of scenarios because of not being able to execute on the dime. And we know rain delays are rain delays, but when you look back at the little things that causes the stumbles, and when I'm looking in the case of Prairie View, a loss against Alcorn, a loss against Pine Bluff, not that they're not that great of a program or trying to dogpile on those two programs. But when you're supposed to be in the upper echelon, you're supposed to win those type of games, and it is appearing that these might come back and bite the Panthers in the backside.
Oh, yeah, man. That's going to be tough. What I've been saying, and my thoughts have always been, you got to have an alternative plan for the rain. Speaking of that, my thoughts of, like, I'm here in the Baton Rouge area, so I know Southern, they should have alternate plan as if they couldn't play on their field. Use one of the high school fields with turf. You know, maybe a Tuesday game, you know, to get those games in. Or a Monday night. You know, you got to be a little smart and use a turf field. I know at Prairie View, there's a Premier Academy not too far with 4 adjacent fields. You're going to have to use those resources, man.
Well, yeah, I guess you get creative, and I guess with the creativity comes extra unplanned budget spending, and I think that might be part of the challenge, but that's neither here nor there. Now, there was a big push to start the season, not start the season, but push the season back. You used to have that week of opportunities for makeups, but for the most part, you didn't have what appears to be as many rain delays, and those were a period of dead weeks, and you try to get some scrap games, if you would, so you guys would get any rust. But it seemed like that plan is somewhat backfired in this 2023 season.
Absolutely, Mike. I think it's time, Mike, where you're going to just have to play everybody, man. And because how can you have an East champion and a West champion? Who's the champ? That would be my question. Who's really the champ? You got Alabama State with 33 wins. You got Grambling with a total of 24 wins. Who's the champ? Until you do like basketball, you're not going to really know who's the champ until the end of the SWAC championship.
Well, now you kind of sounded like the guys on the football side of the field. Now, when I was speaking with Coach Willie Simmons from FAMU a few months back, because they had the misfortunes of being in the same division with Jackson State, they felt that they should have qualified to play for the championship game when you can only play and execute on the teams on your schedule, right? So in the case of baseball, at least you can somewhat settle it on the field with the tournament that we have structured, with your ones versus the fours and so on and so forth. Now, in football's case, you have to just execute on your week to shine. And if you can't beat that man, then you don't become that man. And I don't think you should start circumventing the rules because you may have missed out by a game that you may have played flat on. So I don't know what the solution is, but I know in baseball's case, it's not as lucrative for travel, which is why they have it structured the way they structure.
Well, Mike, how can you have Valley go to Florida twice whereas all you'd have to go is once to Florida to play a Florida school? So the scenario I got is if I go to Alabama State, Alabama A&M comes to me. Next year we'll flip it. That way you have 11 conference series, 33 games, and you could rank them. Well, they'll rank themselves 1 through 10, 1 through 12, and you take the top 8 and you play the tournament.
So if that be the case, are you saying do away with your Eastern and Western divisions?
Yeah, because there's always a false champ. You know, if you win the East or the West, are you really the champ? And I've seen in scenarios where they're giving Coach of the Year to a side, and a guy don't even win a game in the tournament. How can you be the Coach of the Year and you can't even finish at the end of the season? You're done. Well, you're going on.
Those are your degrees of separation, though. That's your regular season, and then you have your postseason. So we've seen it time after time, not just on the collegiate level, but professional rankings as well. You can have an outstanding regular season and lay an egg in postseason play. So do you hold back on naming your Coach of the Year until after postseason play? Or do you just kind of say, okay, you're the regular season guy, but can you prove it? And that's the same case for basketball, because to me, there's no reward for winning the regular season championship in basketball, and in one game or a double elimination, you're out. No, single elimination basketball, you're done, and that's over with. Your season is shot, and you have nothing to show for it.
Well, Mike, that's not true. The regular season champ in basketball usually go to a tournament, NIT, may it be. So they do get to go to the postseason. The conference gets to go to the NCAA tournament. So there's a little reward.
There's a little reward. There's a little reward. I have to back down to that. But go ahead. I didn't mean to cut your point off. Go ahead.
But in this scenario, I think it's time for everybody to play everybody, because if we're looking at things the way they are, the East is really stronger than the West.
Okay. Well, if we look at it like that, if we take that scenario, you know how we have the beginning of the season, the MLB roundup, and then you have the Andre Dawson roundup. How about if you make those games count and just, add to your conference, and you meet at one hub and you play these round robin sessions, and that way it can help you for such a time as this on the backside of the season?
No, I'm not going to do that, Mike, because that means you'll be starting conference play out the gate. And that ain't fair to nobody. You got to get some games to understand what parts of the puzzle that needs to be put together to play certain games. So you need at least in warm-up games. But I'm here looking at Texas Southern with a record of 27-19. And God, I know for sure they've played at least 10 to 12 games against NAIA schools. So, yeah, your record looks good, but in all actuality, you didn't play a D1 schedule. When I look at the East Side guys, you got Alabama State 33-15. They play number D1 schools. Doing 25-12, D1 schools. Florida A&M 24-23. D1 schools. Jackson has played some NAIA, but they're 26-21. That would stop guys from playing those NAIA schools. You've got to play D1 schools if you're going to be D1.
Okay. Now, what about availability of opponents? If you can only play who's available, how do you circumvent that?
You're going to tell me in Texas there's no D1s that Mike Robinson can play?
I'm talking about availability. I didn't say you couldn't play them, but just availability, because there has to be two people to dance, right? Just because I challenge you for a series, you have to accept that challenge, whether you come to me or I come to you. And if I got to fill a schedule of 48 to 54 games, I have to take what's available.
Well, you call the D1s, it's not hard, Mike. You call the D1s and get it scheduled. You call the Houston Christians. You call the Sam Houston. You don't call Arlington Baptist, which is an NAIA school outside of Dallas. Houston Tillerson. There's enough schools in Texas to play that will play you. Call Texas State, they will play you. The only problem I could see, maybe, and they don't have a problem with it, those two schools don't play NAIA schools, the Valleys, the Alcons. So, I don't know, Mike. It's just an opportunity to make your record look good, so when you're done, I guess, to say, I had so many wins, that's not good.
It's ironic that you say that, and you were speaking in reference about Texas Southern. Mike Robb just celebrated his 500th career win, ironically, against Currently this season. So if I'm reading in between the lines and looking at the tea leaves that you're laying out, are you insinuating potentially padding stats?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Without a doubt. If he's got 500 wins, I guarantee you, in those times, 100 probably came against non-D1 opponents.
Okay. Non-D1 opponents. Well, it's something that we're going to have to try to figure out sooner rather than later, because we know the landscape as we once upon a time knew it is constantly changing. They've already approved the hiring of the third assistant with pay for your D1, I'm using air quote, programs, as well as the mad push. It seems like it's even more relevant than ever before now of going from 11.7 to the 22 scholarships, which is going to do nothing but create more degrees of separation. And the bottom line is going to be, are we on this level, not just HBCU, but FCS or mid-majors, however you want to identify them, are we willing to sow the necessary seed back into baseball in order to somewhat smooth out the playing field? I can't say necessarily even the playing field, because you and I both know the playing field will never totally be even, but you can at least smooth out some of the rough edges.
Mike, the HBCUs have opportunity as every other school. If they're awarding you 22 scholarships, it's not a full scholarship sport. So with that being said, there's going to be extra kids coming to your campus that you wasn't going to get as an academic student. They're going to pay anywhere up to 25 to 75% tuition on their own. With that being said, you take that money and you recoup some of that money back into baseball. So if I bring in 50 players a year, I'm only really paying for about 15 of them. When you add all the money together for scholarships, there's 35 guys that's paying tuition fees that could be recouped back into baseball. That could help pay for a coach. That could help with the budget. It's that simple.
It's that simple, man. I love it. As they say on the 18, when a plan comes together. Seems like, man, we need to get you in one of those administrative seats, man. Why are you putting on a uniform, man? You need to be behind a desk.
Well, it's, I don't know. It's just that the guys are not thinking outside the box. They want to say, oh, we can't. Yes, you can. Because San Jose State, when I was in the WAC, that administration only paid the head coach. He had to find ways to pay for his assistant coaches. And so he came up with all kinds of solutions. He would fundraise, which we don't do. He'd also tell administration, if I bring so many students in, can I recoup some of this money?
That seemed like you might be on to something, but we're going to have to further go down that rabbit hole. Maybe we can try to get something together for that on next week when we start wrapping up these series and getting headway toward the tournament, which will be on May 24th from Atlanta, Georgia. But before we do all that, man, it's time for OP's Top 10, and I'm ready to hear what you got this week, my man.
Well, you got Prairie View at 10, Southern University Jags at 9, Maryland Eastern Shores 8, North Carolina A&T 7, Texas Southern 6, Jackson State 5, FAMU 4, Bethune-Cookman 3, Grambling 2, Alabama State still at number 1.
Still at number 1, and they say holding strong. Well, OP, as always, man, I am very, as they say, enlightened from your baseball knowledge and thinking outside of the box. And I'm sure the listeners appreciate what you're bringing to the table. And it's time for us, as they say, to exit stage left for this week. But we got to let you give out your Yahoo shouts, man. So let's let it roll.
I'm going to do something extra. I can be reached at olinparker65@yahoo.com. And if a listener want to call me, my number is 318-436-9688.
Oh, man, there you go. Add a little flavor to it. I appreciate it, my man. Look, I am definitely going to be keeping a watchful eye for these series coming up, man. And do you have any bold projections you want to say, man? Do you think Grambling has enough to hold off the naysayers from the West?
Well, Mike, it's got to be played on the field. I've seen stranger. I've seen a time where UAPB disrupted a series to put more conflict in. I'm trying to think, was it 2008 or 2007? They beat Prairie View, Mike Robinson team, 2 out of 3, and that knocked Grambling out of the tournament.
Wow. Well, we know they got to finish it out, man, and we're going to be there every step of the way. Coach, I appreciate you so much, my man. He is Coach Olin Parker, a.k.a. OP. I am the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince. Don't forget, follow me on Twitter at The Mike Prince Show. The YouTube channel is the Open Mic Broadcast Network. And until the next time, you guys be blessed, and we'll see you on the other side.